Hello and welcome. I'm Aaliyah,
And I'm Curtis.
And I'm Holly.
and this is Heavy Business. And you're listening to an episode of the C Squad where we're going to talk about why you're not making sales, even if you think you're doing everything right. So I'm going to let Curtis kind of ask us the questions. I think you got the questions and some answers. So go ahead and guide this conversation for us.
So just as a background here, one of the reasons why we're doing this is because we've been asked many times, like, what can I do to increase my sales? What can bands be doing, to get better known, that type of thing. So the very first thing that we want to scale back everything on is before you start looking at making your sales, you have to start looking at some of the preparatory steps involved in the whole process here. So if you're a musician in a band, which I'm assuming you are since you're listening to this, you are going to be creating music to sell, or some sort of merchandise item to sell along with your music, or many merchandise items to sell along with your music. So we're lucky because both Aaliyah and Holly are in bands, and both of them have done pretty decently with sales. Holly's band sold out their first run of CDs, and Aaliyah's band has sold quite a few numbers of their CDs as well. Almost sold out of theirs. So both of them have
And we did sell out in the UK warehouse, and we had to order more, and that's the only reason we have any left.
Bam, there you go. So both of them know what they're talking about in this regard. So we decided we're going to have a little powwow about this and try to figure out, or not figure out, but discuss on how we can help other people make sales. So the first thing I want to talk about is, let's start with Aaliyah, because you guys have been, well, Shield of Wings have been around for a lot longer than Disconnected Souls have. So they've kind of had a little bit of a base to build on, obviously. So before you guys even started the campaign, what did you guys have in place already in terms of where you wanted to go? Like, did you guys have a plan already in place, or was it just kind of like, what did you guys do?
Well, in preparation for bringing the band out of a hiatus. So our band was in a very long hiatus. And so, yes, we had kind of an existing fan base of a few people only on Facebook, because back in the day when the band was active previously, Facebook was all that existed, and MySpace is no longer around. So we only had Facebook really left. So yeah, in preparation, other than finding the right people to strengthen the lineup and bring it back, obviously we were looking at the music, we were looking at the image and the genre niching. And one of the things that I learned early on in preparation for bringing the band back was this idea of finding your micro niche. And this concept, I think, is super helpful because the world is such a big place and there's so many bands out there. And if you don't find a small pond to be the big fish in, you're just going to be a small fish, another small fish. So, finding your micro niche is super important. And even for us, we're a symphonic metal band. Symphonic metal isn't specific enough, really. You have to niche it down into like your aesthetic. And finding your aesthetic can be a challenge. It can be a challenge because you don't want to just copy everybody else. You want to do something that's authentic to you, that feels genuine. And so, yeah, one thing that you can do early on is, if you have some demos, you can send them out to a few people that you trust and ask them to tell you 3 bands that they think you sound like. Ask 10 people to do this. And if you see some recurring band names, all of them, just look them up on Wikipedia or Metal Archive, see what genre they are, see their aesthetics, whatever, see what you connect with and what you identify with, and kind of try to make it super, super specific so that you can target your music more effectively to the people that want to hear it.
Cool. Just to point out, so Aaliyah Aaliyah did a very extensive job, just like she said right there. So she did a lot of research. So now I want to ask Holly, were you quite on that level of research, or did you guys kind of do it a little bit differently?
No, we did kind of don't want to say we winged it because we didn't, but we weren't quite
Winging it.
as
Oh God,
prepared.
Holly.
No, we had some preparation. It for us
I
it
was
was
gonna
our
say a shield of wings. We should be the ones winging it, you know?
that's true. That's very true. Um for us this was our first sort of bigger release that we were doing CDs for. So we had like a handful of singles out. Most of them were actually cover songs. So we were very new at the time. So it was kind of trying to establish ourselves as just sort of existing in the first place, plus then trying to sell like our first merchandise kind of item. Um, so it was, I mean, we had stuff like, we're building up social media and we had some friends and we had a few journalists that we already knew and things like that. And we did do a bit of a PR campaign first time round, and then we did obviously the subsequent PR campaign when we re-released it. So that gave us a little bit of a boost and it certainly helped. And I can tell that it certainly helped because I don't think we would have got anywhere near as many sales as we did. Not that we ever had huge amounts because we started with a very small number of CDs because it's one of those you don't want to sort of overdo it and then suddenly you're stuck with like 500 CDs that you can't shift. So it was very small numbers, but considering we were a brand new band who we've not played live properly, we've not done big tours, there's a lot of stuff we haven't done. So to still get what we did, I think was pretty good.
I
And
think
that
you
was
guys
mainly
did
just
phenomenal.
yeah, and it was all really just online marketing as well, really. There wasn't much sort of, in-person stuff that we were actually really doing at the time.
Yep. Okay, so Aaliyah, let's get back to you for a second here. So you guys solidified the lineup, you figured out your micro niches kind of thing, kind of got the idea of who you wanted to target. So one thing you guys also did is you guys planned out your assets in advance, if my recall is correct. So you guys decided to do, was it 3 or 4 videos?
We
I
did
can't remember.
3.
3,
We
okay.
did 3, yeah.
Cool. So you guys planned out 3 videos and then you had a bunch of other content planned too in advance. Did you not, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, well, we combined, we did a bunch of photography as well as having, a photographer and videographer in the band in James. It really enabled us to create constant content. And, we were able to pay attention to what's doing well, and realize that video media does well, even if you're announcing something, announcing it verbally is far more powerful, impactful than just in text in a post. So making a video of yourself speaking, even if you're all dolled up and in your brand, like if that's what you want, that's totally fine. And it can be really, really strong for your branding to do that. But where am I going with this? Yeah, I planned out as much as I could on my own. I had a spreadsheet and I was like, okay, this is the schedule we need to release. If we want to release the album in this month, then this many months before we need our first single, then we need our second single, and then our third single. And we need this kind of content, this kind of content, this kind of content in between, and just have it be like constantly flowing to build up to the release cycle. Honestly, next time I want to do a longer release cycle, even longer.
I think you should. Yeah. Okay, so Holly, let's get back. Oh, sorry, Leah, go ahead.
One thing I want to say, and I don't know if we're going to get to this later, about if you're having trouble selling your music, you're selling a product. And if you're having trouble selling your product and you're doing all of the sales aspects correctly, you need to go back and look at your product and see if there's something lacking there. That can be anything from branding. It can be, production quality, even if it's well-written songs. If it's good production quality, but it's not well-written songs. If it doesn't have anything unique about it is the other thing, because there is a lot of music out there and there's a lot of high quality music out there and there's a lot of crap too, but if you're high quality, but you sound the same as 5 other bands that are already doing well, you've got to add something to make it more unique and different, something to stand out.
Agreed.
So that to me is the major takeaway from this concept of sales. And that's the most important thing when it comes to sales.
I agree 100%. Okay, so Holly, let's get back to you for one brief second. That was very well said, Aaliyah, by the way. So let's get back to you for a second. So how much in advance did you get all your stuff prepped out for those type of things, like with the singles and everything like that?
Yeah, we did things pretty reasonably in advance.
Okay.
I mean, in our next cycle for a big thing, I will try and do it slightly further in advance and plan out slightly more.
Well, you already are. You guys have released one
Well,
single already, and you haven't even
we
announced the
are
album date yet.
yeah, we are now in the beginnings of our next album release cycle. So it's I'm trying to plan things out a bit more thoroughly than I did last time. Um, the biggest thing I think is social media content for us, because that's our main selling point at the moment, and it's getting the balance between selling stuff but also just engaging stuff, and all of that. So that's kind of our main thing. And it's hard because it's time consuming and it's hard work, and you're trying to work on the album and the promotion of the actual thing, but you've also got to do everything else as well.
And
So
you
I think
both
this is
already have 100 other jobs.
and we both have 100 million other things going on.
Mhm.
But I think this is why, with what Aaliyah was saying, it's so important to plan ahead, because then if you've got 27 million things on, but you've got a schedule and as much done ahead of time as you can do, it does make life easier down the line, that you can just think, okay, we just got to schedule this today and it's done, rather than thinking, I've not posted in a week, I've got to post something because the new album's coming out.
Yep.
So I think organization is pretty key. And I think as well, a lot of people still don't necessarily realize how far in advance you need to do stuff. Like, it's not just a couple of months, it's really a good few months in advance, ideally, if you can do. So you need to start planning stuff, because yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we talked about the planning aspect of things. We touched upon it. I know we don't have like a ton of time since this is an afternoon podcast. But so one key thing that Aaliyah brought up, and I know she's probably going to want to touch on this again, is the key thing is, like, you can know your market, you can plan everything, you can have everything worked out as to all the content you're going to do. But one key thing you need to make sure of is that you have high quality music. Because if you don't have high quality music, it's just not going to, I mean, it could, but I mean, it's very unlikely that you're going to really get anywhere with low quality music. There is always the odd band that does okay with low quality music, but it's more of a fluke. But you always want to get things up to a professional standard. Aaliyah, do you want to just kind of touch on that just briefly before we go on to the actual sales aspect? Because we're going to assume that people have high quality music after this.
Sure.
Cool.
Well, when Curtis says high quality music, you might be thinking, well, I paid $5,000 for a professional recording, professional mixing and mastering, or $10,000 or whatever you paid. And maybe your production quality is high quality. But if that's the case, you need to maybe relook at the songwriting quality and your lyrics. You know, nobody listens to lyrics anyway, unless they're really cheesy, and they're not supposed to be cheesy, you know, and like nobody pays attention to lyrics unless they're bad almost. And so you have to be really careful and be analytical about that. You want to be paying attention to whether there is any kind of unique spirit to your music, which there should be, because we're individuals unique. So maybe you need to put more of your soul, more of yourself into your music. And that's what I would advise. I wouldn't advise to be like, oh, I'm going to pick an aesthetic that's going to be trending and I'm going to do that, unless your main goal in music is to create something sellable. And that's the other thing to look at as well, your motivations, right? Because if your motivation is to sell music, I don't think you're going to be able to focus on the authenticity as much. And the bands that do the best, to me, you know, most of the time, I think they have that level of authenticity. But there's the two sides to the coin, of course, all the time. So that's why I'm like having trouble, like kind of narrowing it down to a succinct phrase or sentence. But yeah, it's just look at what you're writing and be honest with yourself. Not everybody is meant for or destined to create music for the masses, you know, and we're in metal. So what would you expect, right? Yeah, I think the key thing to look at is your motivations and remember why you're doing music at all, and go back to your roots and go back to the music and question it hard.
Yep. Cool. Holly, do you have anything to add before we go into the next aspect of things?
I think it's just partly sort of, I guess part of this almost feeds into knowing your market a bit as well, aren't they? Because there's certain areas of metal where people still, I think, very much buy physical merch versus others where maybe they don't. And this is going to vary across locations as well as different genres
Very
and
true,
things.
very true.
So it's kind of, if you're in a sort of subgenre where they're generally speaking, people aren't buying as many CDs, for example, but they are buying vinyl, maybe you then need to think, okay, let's not necessarily buy that many CDs, but let's invest in vinyl because maybe that would be a good decision. Or vice versa, maybe you've got a group of like a local scene that people buy loads of t-shirts, but they don't really buy loads of CDs. It's kind of being aware of your audience, both in terms of what music they like, but also in terms of what are they realistically more likely to buy from you, I think is quite important. And that comes down to, I guess, sort of the authenticity thing again, and also the high quality thing, because when you've got physical stuff, then there's other layers of artwork, right? So if it's really maybe not the best design of artwork, or it's just not maybe as interesting or not necessarily unique, but a bit, a little bit more distinctive. If it just looks like a generic metalcore t-shirt, for example, people aren't necessarily going to go and buy it. It's that thing of finding what makes you stand out a little bit more, and then you can apply it to every other aspect of what you're doing. And it's hard. It's hard because if it was easy, everybody would do it and everyone would sell millions of copies of everything, right? So
100%.
it's kind of, you've got to experiment and you've got to test and see, does this work? Does that not work? And so
Right, and you
yeah,
can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Holly, that was a real knowledge bomb you just dropped about the different types of merch and what the different genres buy, because you're right. Some genres, they don't buy as much of certain things. Like I noticed when I went to a deathcore show, they barely had any physical albums. It was all t-shirts mainly and apparel and stuff like that. So, I was kind of surprised, but it would appear that they were selling. So cool. Okay, so now assuming we have high quality music, unless Aaliyah had something else she wanted to add on that.
I don't think so. It's kind of hard for me to speak on that, like too much depth. But, there are lots of great courses out there on songwriting and free videos on YouTube. So, check them out, see if you're in line with them, with their thinking, and, just make sure you're on point with that.
Cool. So assuming now you have good songs, and you're going to be releasing an album, or you're going to be releasing t-shirts to sell along with your single, or whatever the heck it is that you're doing. So next thing you need to do is you need to actually, you guys are going to laugh, but this is one point that a lot of bands seem to miss. And I've even seen this happen with labels, but it's the most obvious thing. But they don't actually have a place where you can buy the item. So I've seen it where, I'm not even joking, where someone has said to me that they're not getting any sales, or their sales aren't very good. And I'll say, well, where can you buy it? And they'll say, well, I just expect people to DM me or something like that. And I'm not even joking. This has actually happened, or it's not up on Spotify, or it's not up on YouTube, or it's not up on Bandcamp, or they don't have an actual paid, like a big cartel or something to go to. And this is probably the most obvious thing in the world, but you need to have a place where people can buy your stuff. So
yeah, people don't want to, people are either going to be too nervous to talk to you, You know, they don't want to message you, ask you how much the album is, and then be like, oh, never mind, I actually don't want to buy it. Like,
Exactly.
they
That's
aren't
the
going to
thing.
take that risk.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so let's start with Holly here. So you guys have a couple places to buy your CD, if I'm not mistaken. Can you kind of list off what you guys have just as a start? Because I know you guys aren't using distro, because I'm gonna ask Aaliyah in a second on what they did, but you can do
Yeah,
yours first.
so we've basically just got Bandcamp and Teespring at the moment. We are potentially moving to something else, but that's our current setup. I don't like the fact that they're separate because so Bandcamp is CDs, music, and a few merch items, like smaller things. Teespring is all t-shirts and stuff because it's print on demand. We do not sell anywhere near as many t-shirts as I think we would do if they were all in the same place. But it's a case of when we set that up, that was kind of the best option we had at the time. So we are now looking into other things, but it's kind of the more separate things you've got, the harder I think it is for people to A, find them, and B, it just gets confusing. So ideally you kind of need everything in one place or really, really obvious signposts. But even then it doesn't necessarily work because the more things people have got to click through, the less likely they are to get to them. So it's kind of how do you make everything as accessible and obvious and clear and easy to see as possible, and then you'll get merch sales.
And everyone makes
yeah.
mistakes on this at first, I'm going to point out.
Oh yeah, it's tricky. It takes a bit of figuring out. I mean,
Yeah.
because one thing, I mean, like you were saying about bands who expect people to DM them, the amount of time that bands do have a Bandcamp, or they do have a big cartel, or they do have whatever, but yeah, they just never share the link anywhere. And it's like the internet is a big place. You're not just going to come across these websites one day. Like, you've got to make it super, super easy for people to find them.
So Aaliyah, can you kind of go over what you guys did for your different methods of buying things?
Sure. One thing I want to say that other than our pre-order campaign, by far the most merch we sell is at live shows, by far. And so you want to keep that in mind. If you're not playing live shows, you're not going to be moving stuff as much as if you were. But aside from that, I will talk about our pre-order campaign a bit. What we had done was we approached it much like you see bands doing now, where they will release the first single with a music video and at the same time announce their pre-order. So we had our music video as our campaign video, basically. We didn't do anything talking about the album. All we had was just the music video and then a bunch of graphics explaining where the money goes. And we made our page look all pretty. We set it up on Kickstarter just as our pre-order. And this way people could choose to support us or buy the album digitally, physically. They could pre-order t-shirts and things like that. And through that, we met our funding goal, which we did set very low based on what our fan base was already on Facebook, that we didn't have an Instagram really at the time, and or any other platforms. So yeah, we had a modest goal based upon our following, and we knew that we were going to have to come out of pocket quite a bit for our own album, for the first album at least. So we just planned for that, and we paid to get professional artwork from an artist that we really liked. I'm really not sure what else I can say about that, but so that was our pre-order campaign. If anybody ever has questions about that, they can ask me. I'm happy to talk more about it. But as of after that campaign, we have Bandcamp. And that's basically where we sell everything digitally now. For a brief time, we had a deal with a distributor in the UK. And for that, I had produced a second pressing of CDs in the UK so that we wouldn't have to pay any kind of duties or crazy shipping fees or anything like that. I just sent over the digital disc image to a CD manufacturer in the UK and had them produce more copies there and send them to the distributor in the UK. And we actually sold out of that first run, and Holly alerted me that we were sold out. And so I contacted them, and we had some more pressed. Unfortunately, that's no longer an option that I've been able to figure out, because that distributor decided to downscale all of their smaller acts and basically any independent artists. So they're only keeping their larger clients' labels and things like that. And that's unfortunate for us, because our genre is a lot more popular in Europe. And so now people have only the option to purchase it through either any store that may have purchased from that UK distributor and has it in Europe, or directly from our Bandcamp store. And so now they have to pay the crazy shipping fees to Europe,
Ooh.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. All right. So is there any other avenues that you guys use to ramp up your sales before we go into the next aspect of things?
I mean, we used YouTube, we used social media. Probably the most successful advertisement we used was on YouTube. But yeah, other than that, just we had our PR campaign, of course, which helped a lot.
I'm sure.
But yeah.
Before I go on to Holly, I just want to give Aaliyah another shout out, because Shield of Wings basically had everything figured out all to work out with the PR campaign. Like, she had literally everything. She had just joined the band not that long beforehand, right? Wasn't it like only a year or something like that? 2 years?
Oh, I mean, I met James in 2014.
Fair.
And I'm kind of the reason why he's like, not the reason why, but I definitely was one of the encouraging factors to have him bring back the band.
Fair.
So although I was not officially announced as a band member until 2019, I definitely was thinking about things behind the scene a little bit longer.
Fair, okay. Then my point wasn't going to be a very good point, because I was going to say that even though she hadn't been doing it for very long, she had it all well thought out and just perfectly planned out. But if you ever want to see a campaign that was done extremely well with all the parts in place, go look at what Shield of Wings did for their unfinished campaign. They had basically all the parts planned in advance. Now, Disconnected Souls, let's talk about Disconnected Souls again for another second, because you guys, to continue your guys' sales, you guys have done things like release other singles and stuff to keep yourselves top of mind. Can you kind of go over that, Holly?
Yeah, so we always knew that there was going to be a gap between the EP and our next full-length album. So we kind of made the decision fairly early on, we need to release a fair few singles in between, just because otherwise we're going to disappear off the face of the earth for a year or however long, and then it's even harder to come back again. So we haven't released tons of singles by any means, but we've released a handful that have helped to keep us a little bit more relevant, I think. We had our first big music video with one of them, which was really useful. And so because we ran a YouTube ad on that, and that definitely
And you
helped.
guys got like 23,000 views or something.
We did, it did really well for our first like big ad, like paid ad that we've ever done. So that worked out really well in terms of pushing us out a little bit more, and of course then gave us more video content to do, because I've still got all like loads of B-roll and behind the scenes stuff that we can use on social media. I just need to edit it. But I've got it. So yeah, and like we're doing lyric videos, and we're trying to do things just to keep there being something there. But I think even just doing like little covers, or it doesn't necessarily have to be the most high quality expensive videos every single time. Yes, they certainly help, like the higher quality stuff certainly does help, but if you can't do that, it doesn't mean don't do anything at all. Like, you can do
lyric videos might not be big budget, but they still look pretty damn good.
I must say, we have got a very good lyric video person who does not charge us that much at all, considering actually what the quality of the stuff turns out. So yeah, that's the thing. If you can find, there are so many people out there that are creative people that make stuff and do all these things. So go out and find them, and yeah, they give you great content that you can use. So there's lots of ways that you can find people to help. create the content if you can't do it yourself as well,
100%.
because it is tough.
I'm sure. Okay, so I know we only got a few more minutes left, Aaliyah, so a couple things I just want to cover super quick.
It's
One
fine. I ate
thing
lunch before this.
I didn't know that. Okay, good, cool. Couple things I still want to touch on is one key thing to sales that Aaliyah sort of brought up earlier, and Holly kind of did earlier as well, but I want to touch on this in depth a little bit, is making sure that you don't fade away from the consciousness. So Unfinished came out not last February, but February 2022. And then your guys' EP came out in September of 2021, right? Holly, do I have that right?
The EP first released in 2020, literally a week
That's
before
right.
COVID, which was
That's
not
right.
ideal.
That's right.
So then we released it in 21. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. I had my timeline mixed up. So both of you guys have had albums out for a little while, yet, and neither of you have released new albums, obviously, in that time, or EPs. But you're both still getting coverage and you're both still getting out there in the public eye. So one thing I just want to touch across with Aaliyah really quickly, like you've had some success with getting YouTubers and other different people to check out your stuff. Can you kind of touch on that briefly? Because I think that helps with getting you guys more people to your shows and stuff like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
To be honest, a lot of the YouTuber thing comes from Twitch, and that is something that is fueled by fans. I mean, there are some Twitch streamers that you can ask to check out your music, but generally speaking, the stuff that we see come up on YouTube is usually a surprise to us. We haven't gone out and contacted YouTubers to cover our music, or even Twitch people anymore. Like, we kind of, for a little while right around the release, I had been messaging our music videos to reaction Twitch streamers, but I think a lot of this can be attributed to TikTok and YouTube Shorts. So, and they're kind of similar in format, but I will say, like, the videos that do the best on each platform might differ. I shouldn't say that. The videos that do the absolute best on TikTok will also typically do well on YouTube, but sometimes in the middle ranges, certain videos will do better on YouTube than on TikTok, and vice versa. And for TikTok, the nice thing is that you can reuse content consistently. We use a combination of live footage, music video footage. We have done one skit so far. That was just completely new footage. But yeah, you can reuse the same audio and video, especially if you're using the memes that are in CapCut, for example. You can pair your video with its own audio with a, clip of John Cena dancing with a funny caption. Whatever. And that's the one that was an example of the one that took off the most for us. We took a video clip that had already done really well, and we paired it with a meme, and it did even better. So that's another avenue that I think bands would definitely benefit from exploring, because you don't have to constantly be filming new stuff or writing new music. You can reuse video content, and you can chop up your music videos in vertical format, or you can use the live footage that you have. You can use that best 15-second part where the crowd was really excited and they were really getting into it, or the best part of the song that has the most build and excitement, and just clip that, crop it to vertical, and you have a piece of content that can do well in YouTube Shorts or TikTok. I'm probably going on way too long about that, but that, I think, is one of the best resources and avenues for new discovery that bands can utilize now.
Awesome. So Holly, let's unless Aaliyah has anything else she wants to have on this. Okay, good. Final thing I just want to go over with you here. So what would you say was the key thing that got you guys from a point of being like, when we first talked, I think it was like 2 years ago or something like that, before you actually sold out of the CDs,
Yes.
you had said something to the effect, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys weren't really sure how you guys were going to sell out of the CDs. So do you remember the actions that you took in order to get that final 20 or 30 or whatever it was sold?
It was things like, doing the re-release was a huge help because that was okay. We now have an excuse basically to get this back in the sort of main focus again. Um, so that's kind of the thing. It's always looking, is there a way that you can create an event or respin things to make them more, not necessarily new, but newsworthy again? And that's so incredibly useful because through that we found, or rather a load more journalists found us that hadn't done the first time round. And there's like quite a few journalists themselves bought stuff, or
Yep.
people listening to them or reading their stuff then bought stuff. So you can sort of see how that works. And things like social media, and sort of, you know, showing the product multiple times, because it is that psychological thing of you need to see something, like, is it 7 times approximately until
1
you will
billion, who
actually, probably, but it's like you've got to see something so many times before you actually buy it. In many circumstances, it's like just one look and you've forgotten what it is, or you've moved on to the next thing. Um, so it's that kind of aspect of, yeah, and showing all sides of the products on social media so people know exactly what it is that they're buying. There's all these little things that I think kind of all came together and helped in the end. Yeah.
what one thing I also want to point out, two last things. One, you actually decided to make the sales and sell out. That was key. You decided you were going to actually sell out of the CDs, so you had that as a target. So you actually had a sales target. Again, you already had the music, you had everything else, but you actually had that sales target. And then number two, on top of that, you actually went ahead and you did the actions needed in order to get the things done. So you actually went out there,
Mm.
you seized
Yeah,
it.
I think that's a good point about targets actually, because before that it's sort of like you're just sat there thinking, I need to sell stuff, but
Yeah,
it's just kind of a big how, why, what do you
yeah.
do? So yeah, having like a goal or more specific target is definitely very helpful, because it focuses you and you think, okay, you've got to do X, Y, Z to achieve this.
Yep.
And then you do this, and then you do that. And so it's like breaking everything down into little steps is always really useful.
And I think that's
Yeah.
Leah's part of Leah's secret to success too, is I know she does that a lot with her things, is she always has ideas of what she wants to get done and then goes and does it too. So
Yeah, it's not magic. It's just making goals and taking the actions to make them happen.
yep. Anything else we need to cover, Leah, or are we out of time?
Oh, well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up,
Cool.
unless you have something else to say.
The only other thing I could say is go check out Shield of Wings and Disconnected Souls. They both have Bandcamps, they both have Spotify's, they have YouTube channels. So go check them out and
We
buy
are
their
on the
stuff.
YouTubes.
The YouTubes. So go check out their stuff, buy something, stream something. Both of them are good. So check them out. That's all I gotta say.
All right, Holly, any final words?
I think just make goals, targets and goals. That's,
All
yeah.
right,
Cool.
right on. Well, everyone listening, thank you for listening. I hope that you learned something helpful today. And if you have any questions about any topics that we brought up today, please ask them. We'd be happy to dive deep into any little bits of this that you'd like. And until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.